Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Eddie Marcus here again. I got another inspiration that I want to share with you. Might help us to understand life a little bit better. Might help guide us on down this path that we're seeking. And if we're on the wrong path, get us there fast. Let's go to a biblical scenario. You know the story of Adam and Eve being in the garden. I won't repeat it. We're all familiar with it. But what I'm going to ask you to think about is a way of seeing it in today's terms, in today's expressions, not expressions of yesterday, but in expressions of today, which signifies and means perhaps the same thing, if the other is correct. We have Adam and Eve in the garden. Apparently, God has given them everything but the liberty to engage in sex. Because it seems, I use sex because it seems that the only other thing that's equal to money is sex. You know, money means nothing if there's no sex behind it. That's to the common man. And a woman, that sex only means something to it when she gets some control. But there's one lurking behind in secret, that's pulling the strings. And here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Let's look at Adam sitting right there and Eve sitting right there. And all of a sudden the snake, or a thought, whatever it is, it gets in Eve, according to the story. And whatever it tells Eve about, and I'm talking about sex, so maybe it's telling her to indulge herself with herself, persuaded her to do it. And she did it in this scenario that I want you to understand. And having done so, it brought such pleasure to her, she couldn't help but run back and tell Adam. And she, in her woman fantastic way, convinced Adam. And Adam did likewise. And it was just as exciting as could be. Something like he had never, ever felt before. Now you got two people have experienced something that they've never, ever felt before. Now you know what was happening? They were doing it every time they got a chance. But because God has not brought that to their awareness in a sense that they understood, see, what they had actually done was evolved. But they didn't understand this. This was strange. And so their conscience condemned them, and they felt real bad about that. And they tried to hide it from themselves. We heard that God speaks to them, and we can only see it in our minds, in our consciousness that's disturbing us. We can't find no peace. So we try to hide ourselves from other things, as it were. And so we hear the story about being kicked out of the garden, and the tree of life being protected. Well, what was the purpose of the snake getting Eve to get Adam to do what they didn't know whether it was right or wrong, or knew and felt guilty and got condemned themselves, and ended up going out? What was behind all of that? Well, let's see what happened. Somewhere down the line, they were persuaded not to just do this individually, but engage these two instruments that were bringing such wonderful pleasure to them individually. What in the world, what could it do if they were doing it together? Woo! What happened? I don't know how many times they did it. Most times in the world today, after it's done, I know the woman say that was their first time. Isn't it amazing all across the universe? Your parents say don't do this because they've learned. And you act ignorant and did it, and then you say it was your first time. Anyway, what happens? There's a child. And when this child comes into the world, how can this child be raised? But by those who are its parents. And how does these parents discipline themselves? They are persuaded. And in being persuaded, they are detached from that which is proper. And they have invaded or robbed without the right qualifications the tree of life. And life starts and keeps going and keeps going, and the flowers keep dying and keep dying, and life keeps going and keeps going. And what are they doing as they go? They are creating pain, creating suffering one unto another, because it is under the influence of that which led it down this path to where it is today. And yet, someone said that the Father so loved the world, you and I, that he gave his begotten Son. And they say that Jesus was his begotten Son who came to the earth and engaged himself as it was done according to the authors, whomever they might be. And yet it meant nothing. But in it was a story worth dying for. And they say that's what he did. And I have no problem with that, because in my lifetime I've seen men do the same thing, like Malcolm X, like Martin Luther King Jr., like the Kennedy brothers, Medgar Evers, 3 boys down in Philadelphia, Mississippi, and so many others. This little lady from Detroit, I want to call her name, but I don't remember her name. But I do remember that she was killed because she was fighting for the freedom of others. Gave their lives. Well, who were they? They were the only begotten sons and daughters of the Creator. And you say it was Jesus. But any man, any woman who walks according to the path of love hey, I hope I don't sound like I'm preaching to you, the begotten sons and daughters of God. And what are your purpose? Your purpose is to become a love light, a love letter, a salt of the earth. What does that mean? That means to stand up against evil. And what is evil? All that is around you, that's evil. So what is good? Eradicating that. Why? Why? For the benefit of all the human race, for the benefit of all the children that have come into this world of darkness. Why? Because love is the key. And how do you prove it? By doing to others as you would have others to do unto you. And how do you start that? By recognizing, God dog it, that everything belongs to the one that made it and it wasn't you. Hey! And so, Adam and Eve, you and I, but we are being fed a lie because we think that this is right. Even though we have crime and violence and terrorism and war